"Can you check out the engines for fire or smoke?" Captain Malcolm told the lead flight attendant, as the second engine is not producing any thrust, and the other engine is stuck at 74% power. But upon further review, the engines are seamless. No fire and no smoke, which means something is up. If the engines continue to stay the same thrust, the pilots would have to land 100 knots faster than regular landing speeds. This is their only chance to land the plane carrying 369 passengers. Will the pilots be able to land, or will it end in destruction? This is the story of Cathay Pacific Flight 780. On April 13, 2010, a 11-year-old Airbus A330 was scheduled to depart from Wanda International, bound for Hong Kong International Airport for a 5-hour journey. The flight boarded 309 passengers and 13 crew. The pilot in charge of their flight was Captain Waters, age 35, has had over 7,700 flight hours, with just about 2,600 hours on the A330. The first officer was David Hayhoe, age 37, had just about 4,000 hours, 1,000 of which on the Airbus A330. Hayhoe had previously been a Royal Australian Air Force pilot for 11 years before turning to commercial aviation. Prior to the flight, standard pre-flight checks were done, and Captain Malcolm walked around the aircraft and saw no visible issues, which meant the plane would be able to take off. The sky was perfect, and it seems like the flight would just be another routine flight. Little did the pilots and the passengers know, it wouldn't be. The flight took off from runway 28, climbing to 39,000 feet. However, 30 minutes into the climb, the pilots noticed engine pressure ratio, or EPR, in the engine 2. The same thing was happening in engine 1, but less severe. The aircraft was, for the most part, having trouble maintaining a certain speed. This was unusual to the pilots, but they shrugged it off and continued the flight. They had just reached 39,000 feet and caught something eye-catching. Engine 2 control system fault. The pilots desperately consult maintenance workers on what to do. The maintenance worker eventually told them that it would be safe to continue the flight to Hong Kong. But as time passed, the fluctuations worsened. Approximately 2 hours after the departure, the engine 2 control system fault message reappeared. This time, additional caution warnings emerged. Engine 2 slow response, and avoid rapid thrust changes. The crew again consulted maintenance control, were briefed to continue, monitoring closely the situation. They are still over 150 nautical miles away from Hong Kong, so it would be risky. The pilots followed what the ECAM was saying and took it with precaution. Several maintenance crew were exchanging information with the pilots and monitoring their state. They would have to continue the flight. The descent to Hong Kong begun. The A330 is over the South China Sea, 230 kilometers southeast to the Hong Kong International Airport. But now, further ECAM messages appeared. But this time, it's the worst. Engine 1 control system fault, and engine 2 stalled. The stall message indicates a compressor stall, or disruption in airflow through the engine. The plane is generating no thrust in the second engine, which means they'll only have one engine to make it to Hong Kong. But even that engine is unreliable, but it's all they got. Soon after, they heard an alarming pop sound and sensed a sort of burning odor. The pilots set the throttle to idle, so no further complications could happen in the engines. And they set their only engine to the highest thrust level to level the planes, as if both engines were there. The pilots declared a pan alert, notifying ATC that something was wrong with the aircraft and they needed priority landing and a direct and easy path to the runway. Emergency vehicles at Hong Kong International emerged. Shortly afterward, as the aircraft descended further, approximately 83 kilometers out, approaching 8,000 feet, the ECAM alerted engine 1 stall. That meant both engines were now not producing any thrust. At that point, the crew declared Mayday, a full emergency. They disengaged the autopilot and flight director, switching to manual flight control. With both engines gone, the plane is now gliding and descending rapidly. With desperate manner, Captain Malcolm thought of an idea that would change everything. Captain Malcolm took the thrust of engine 1 and he slowly moved engine 1 throttle up. It was working. The power kept gradually climbing and the thrust lever on engine 1 kept going up. It seemed like full power was possible, but that's when the pilots realized it halted at 74%. Officer Heiho did the math and established a conclusion that the plane would be able to level off at 5,500 feet and be able to make it to the airport. The rapid descent stopped, but engine 1 could still stall again at any moment. This will be a one-take landing or else the flight could be doomed. As Hong Kong came into view, the crew faced an extremely high-risk landing scenario. Their speed on approach would be nearly double the normal landing speed. Therefore, the approach to the runway was quick. And when they touched down, their ground speed was 426 kilometers an hour, or 231 knots. Nearly 95 knots over the normal. When they hit the ground, the aircraft bounced a few times due to the high speeds, which meant the landing was rough. They slammed the nose gear down, and it defracted a bit of the left engine while doing so. Engine 2 was still unresponsive, but engine 1 wasn't, so they could deploy reverse thrust and slow the plane down. The braking system was manually applied, spoilers deployed automatically. The crew carefully slowed the aircraft down, managing high brake heat and weight. With just 129 feet of the runway left, the plane came to a complete stop. 5 of the 8 main tires were deflating during or after a touchdown, and it had caused a fire. Captain Malcolm declared immediate evacuation of all 309 passengers. Despite the situation with the flight, everyone survived. Captain Malcolm and Captain Heiho will be remembered for saving all 322 souls on board. If you want to see part 2 of the flight, the investigation, please tell me by liking and tagging me in the comments if you want a whole other part with the investigation. But that's the story of Cathay Pacific Flight 780.